Hey everyone, Gill Gross here, and it is time for another mailbag where I answer your questions, hot takes, observations, and ultimately your comments about tennis or anything else. It is the 2025 post-US Open Mega Mailbag, a joyous occasion, one that I always look forward to. And this time even more so because due to scheduling difficulties, I did not do a early round mailbag or a first Monday of a major mailbag, which I usually do at the very start of a slam. So it's been a while since we've exchanged ideas, exchanged thoughts. I don't like how long it's been. Makes me even more anxious to get going here. 167 of you left comments. Thank you for the effort. I so appreciate that, and it always pains me that I can only get to a small percentage of those. But it was a great comment section this week, and again, my full appreciation for that. So let's get into it. First one is from member Niklas. Hi, Gil. Novak has clearly been the third best player in 2025. I think that fact alone warrants a fully committed 2026 season from him. Do you agree? Yes, Sincaraz might seem like an unstoppable force at the moment, but let's not forget that they're the only two in front of him. Injuries, loss of form, and surprising early round losses happen, even to the best, and if any of those come to be and the draws open up, he should be right there pouncing at number 25. Yeah, I do agree with this, and I think this is exactly how Novak is looking at it right now. Because make no mistake, if you listen to what he said after Wimbledon or after the US Open, Djokovic has no delusions about his prospects moving forward against Alcaraz and Sinner in the best-of-5 format come the 5th, 6th, or 7th match of a 2-week event. He has been very honest about how his body right now is not really giving him a chance to be as competitive as he wants in that situation. And Novak's 38, and Alcaraz and Sinner are 22 and 23 respectively. How is that getting better? How is that getting better moving forward? It's hard to imagine a world in which it does. And it sounds like Novak is having trouble imagining that as well. But if you are third best, you are close. And if you're making semifinals, you're close. You're putting yourself in the mix. There's no reason to pass up an opportunity to put yourself in the mix if you still have the ability to do that. So that's exactly how I think Novak is currently looking at this, which is, look, in some ways, it's kind of damning to think like Djokovic is now the guy where you're saying, oh, if things break right for him, then maybe. Where for so many years it was a group looking up at Novak and we were having to say, oh, can so-and-so win a major? Well, if this and that happens. But now Djokovic is kind of in that position, right? Next one is from Malakat. Hi, Gil. Hope you're doing well. I am. Thank you. This is about Draper and his body. After just hearing the recent news on Draper missing the rest of 2025, what are your thoughts on the arm injury that he's been dealing with post-Wimbledon? Do you believe that these series of injuries that he's had throughout his career will seriously affect his career? Lastly, what can he do to minimize these strings of injuries he's been having, if possible? Always interested in hearing your thoughts, and take care as always. I would argue that the injury struggles that Jack Draper has had have already had a great effect on his career. I mean, you look at Jack Draper as somewhat of a late bloomer. The fact that it took him until this year, well, let's see, like last year he finished 15 in the world, the year before 61 in the world, and this year he was on pace to have a top 10 season, but that's probably not going to happen now. Look, he's not that late a bloomer, actually, at 23, but I think he could have been 12 to 24 months further along had he been a little bit more healthy when he was in his late teens, early 20s, but he couldn't stay healthy. And that's why last year when Jack played a full season, last season he played 59 matches. I was like, some people were saying that Jack had in some ways a disappointing season, and I was like, you guys are crazy. Well, maybe not by the end of last year, but there were points in 2024 where folks were saying that Jack is underperforming, and I'm like, he's healthy. He's not underperforming. It's a huge step in his career that he's actually playing a full year healthy. And it was a long run of that. And I would say for Jack, it's dispiriting that the injury bug has bitten him again. But look, it's possible that he's never going to fully get over that. I mean, we do see that with some players. You'd hope it's not as bad as like Berrettini. You'd hope it's more like, not saying Jack can be this, but you'd hope it's more like Rafa, where, okay, there are a lot of injury disruptions, but, you know, it's not really stopping. First of all, there just wasn't a lot of like catastrophic stuff with Nadal. It was like there were a lot of, it felt like 2-month, 3-month injuries over the years, and it just didn't really derail him because he would always come back, get things going pretty quickly, and he always was sort of healthy at the right times of the season that he wanted to be healthy. So, you know, this is hard. Like, it's hard to answer this question in a way where I feel like I'm delivering the insight that maybe you're looking for. I mean, injury prevention for these guys is a full-time job. They are constantly doing everything they can. From everything I know about Jack and everything I've seen from Jack, he is a guy who is willing to make those sacrifices, that is not going to leave any stone unturned, but genetics also play a role here. And there's examples like Nick Kyrgios, where the guy hasn't been healthy because he doesn't put in the work. He's admitted that, and it's clear as day. And then there are other guys who actually, they're putting in the work, but their bodies are fragile. So who knows what it is with Jack? Because sometimes like young players can get injured a lot and they can kind of get over that. And it did look like Jack was over that. But now if I just read off his match totals season by season, 2022, he actually played a full season between the Challenger Tour and the main tour. But 2023 was 31 matches. That's incomplete. Last year was 59 matches, so that's a full season. This year is going to end at 40. So that's not a full season. The year before was a really rough one. He only played 21 matches in 2021. 2020, he was injured most of the year. Crazy, though, that it's just, what's a bummer, a real bummer, is if you asked me in May, is Jack Draper going to be in the ATP Finals? I would have said yeah, as if it were like a fact. Won't be the case. And even if he wasn't out for the season, it would have actually been tough. It would have been up in the air whether or not he would have gotten in. Next one is from member Eow. You can become a member by hitting that join button, contribute to the channel, $2 a month. It's a huge help. And I try to give you priority in the mailbag. Eow says, hi, Gill. Your thoughts on Daniil Medvedev hiring Tomas Johansson and Rohan Goatsky? I don't know if that's how to pronounce his name. Should we call him Coach Goat? Any thoughts on what they can do to help him for the fall season? Thanks for your insight. So I've already talked about Daniil splitting with Gilles Savara. I feel like the fact that that relationship lasted as long as it did is a testament to how strong that collaboration was. But Daniil was kind of left with no options. I mean, he needs to continue to tinker and try things to try to reverse what's been a 2 to 3 year long, I would say, what started out as like a slow decline, it has accelerated in 2025. And he's got to keep trying stuff, but also I think in some ways he needs to stabilize a little bit. Because at points in this season, it feels like, all right, I know you want to try a lot, but you're changing your racket in the middle of a match. Like, is that really conducive? Johansson is an incredibly experienced coach, obviously had a great playing career. So this is a seasoned dude who brings a lot of experience and a lot of know-how. If you look at the players who he has coached, a lot of WTA actually, Sorana Cirstea, Kei Nishikori, who else? I'm going to try to pull up a list here. Is there a list? Sakari, when she was very young. Filip Krajinovic, David Goffin. I think that's the end of the list. I'm kind of interested, though, by this other guy. Rohan. He seems like a guy who's actually spent most of his career in the developmental ranks, like running academies. And for Daniil to bring him on board is an interesting move. I like that. I think some of these really elite academy coaches are some of the best in the world if you want to make technical changes. I think a lot of the times they're actually going to be better than the Johansson type, who's a former pro, and I think will probably bring a lot to the table mentally and tactically. But generally speaking, the guys who are best with the technique are the coaches with the developmental background, and that's Rohan Gotsky. And for Medvedev, as you guys know, I have not been very optimistic, as I've been asked repeatedly in the last 2 years what he needs to do to get back to the elite ranks in the upper echelon and competing for the biggest titles. And at no point have I been like, yeah, he just needs to do this and this and this. I've more been a pessimist about it. And I've said, look, his game, he is declining physically. He has lost one of his big weapons in his serve. And those two things happening at the same time makes it really difficult for him to do what he did over the course of the prime of his career to win matches. So now you go to, oh, well, he needs to adapt. And you look at what he does technically and all the quirks in his game, and you think, is this a player who is going to be able to make the adaptations necessary to transition into being a more offensive, ground stroke oriented player? He can't be passive off the ground anymore because he doesn't really have the physicality. He doesn't have that early offense and the ability to just ram through his service games off the back of the strength of his first serve. So it has created a real dilemma. And for me, he's tried the technology angle a lot, the racket technology. That has not provided the answers. I think tactically he's tried a lot of different stuff. It's time for him to maybe, and I think it's hard because his technique is so different, but it's time for him to maybe start looking at that stuff. Physical training, I don't think body type wise and genetically he's going to be able to get a lot stronger. Otherwise, I think at some point in his career that would have already happened. That's the other thing that kind of pops into my mind. If he wants to build a little bit more weight of shot, can he go the physical route? I don't think so. So maybe it's time to tinker with technique a little bit more than he has so far. And that's where overhauling the coaching, there could be some ideas there. Maybe. I think that's what it needs to come to. Next one from Sanj. And finally, we'll talk about Sinner Alcaraz. There were a lot of questions about Sinner Alcaraz, but I was almost expecting it to be even more than it was. But this one got 31 likes. I think it might have been the most liked comment. All right, from Sanj. One thing I haven't seen discussed is that this match was played with the roof closed. A lot of the discourse around Carlos has been that he struggles on indoor hard courts, whereas it's Sinner's strongest surface, highlighted by his dominant runs in Asia and Turin in 2023 and 2024. As an Alcaraz fan, when I heard the roof would be closed before the match, I worried that this might tilt things in Sinner's favor. Am I overestimating the impact of the roof here? If not, how should we think about the old narrative around Carlos indoors? And what does this performance suggest for him leading into the indoor tournaments at the end of the season? Good point. So I was thinking about doing a segment on this in Monday Match Analysis. I just didn't quite have enough. But resume-wise, between Sinner and Alcaraz, if you look at indoor resume, it's not even a contest. I mean, Jannik, and I can go further than you talked about 2023 and 2024. I can go further. When Sinner was not winning a lot of titles, when Jannik was not in the top 15, he was winning indoors. He was winning tournaments indoors. Like Sofia was one of the first tournaments that he, year after year, usually played finals or won titles. So it was very early on, his best conditions. And I guess at the time I interpreted that as, look, Jannik, and he's changed a lot as a player. He's put so much more margin in his game. But when Sinner was kind of low margin on the forehand, I just felt it gave him the best opportunity to play the offensive style off, the low margin offensive style off the ground without missing. That was kind of my interpretation of it. The still conditions, here's the funny part about this. The still conditions, so you eliminate wind. First of all, I think Ash is so large that even when they play outdoors, since they put the roof overhead and the wind doesn't really get in, Ash doesn't get windy anymore. So in that sense, the roof closed versus the roof open, it's not as impactful as it would be potentially at other events where the wind gets inside the stadium more so than Ash does. But I would think that what the still conditions would mostly do for Sinner would be accentuate his precision serving. You look at a player like Giovanni Pesci-Pericard, what he did in Basel, like that serving level, that is basically inaccessible outdoors. The indoor aspect just helps the serve a whole lot because the elements that will tweak your ball toss by that couple of millimeters and then tweak the flight of the ball by a couple of millimeters. That's so important for the serve when ultimately, especially on the first serve, you're basically trying to paint lines. And because of that level of precision on that particular shot, the indoors can be such a helpful factor. And you guys know where I'm going with this. I mean, Sinner serves 48%. So, I mean, he didn't get much benefit from the still conditions in terms of serving. Carlos struggling indoors, I think some of that is calendar spot. I really do. I've said this a lot, but I just think post-US Open, Carlos has lacked some focus and energy, and I just think when, especially early in his career, it's just, he struck me as a little bit burnt out and struggling with concentration after the US Open. So that's a big part of it. Now, does he like a court as fast as Turin? No, definitely not. And he has said, he's gone as far as complaining in Turin, like literally saying, why are these courts so fast? This is ridiculous. And part of it is also, especially when Alcaraz was not as good a server as he is now, but he couldn't really take advantage of the server's conditions, and other players could do that against him. The low bounce is also another big thing. A lot of these indoor tournaments, it bounces lower, and Carlos doesn't love that. But it's hard for me to really square what I make of the final being an indoors match, because I do think that Ash plays not as radically different indoors versus outdoors as most other venues. Ultimately, though, I'm curious to see moving forward how Carlos fares at indoor tournaments, because I just think it doesn't necessarily have to go the way of Nadal. Alcaraz is so much more, attacking, and there's just a lot of things that you'd think, okay, in conditions that really reward aggression and precision aggression, there are ways in which, of course, that should help Carlos. And for that reason, I think last year I was expecting him to have a good indoor hardcourt season. It didn't completely materialize, but I don't know if it'll be a Nadal situation where he doesn't have good results on indoor hardcourt all year long. All career long. So it's an interesting factor here. All right, a couple ones also on Sinner Alcaraz from Sabyachi. Will Sinner ever solve the Alcaraz puzzle, or he's just going to win 1 out of every 8 matches? And then the next one is from Puns. Sinner has won 1 match in the last 8 against Carlos. It's not even close. Let me address that second comment first. Ultimately, it's true. Like, the numbers don't lie, and what matters is who wins the matches and who doesn't win the matches. But let me also insert into the evidence, and at the very least point out that in the 15 matches that they've played, the last 15, Alcaraz leads the head-to-head 10-5. The total points won is +6 for Carlos. +6. I hope Sportsball, which is a really great account on Instagram that does a lot of like cool graphics about sports, I hope they're right about this, because it's almost hard to believe that a 10-5 head-to-head could be just 6. But you look at Alcaraz saving match points against Sinner at majors on 2 separate occasions and how close so many of their matches have been, and it's not completely out of the realm. So many of their matches have been so close. Last 2 kind of haven't. But you've got to at least acknowledge that when you look at the head-to-head. You have to. Will Sinner ever solve the Alcaraz puzzle? Or is he just going, basically, will this continue? Is this where we are for the rest of time? That would be shocking. It really would be. I mean, there's Serena Williams, Maria Sharapova, right? It's not like we've never seen 2 players, not that Maria and Serena were comparable as players, like in the grand scheme of things, but like we've absolutely seen lopsided head-to-heads towards the top of both men's and women's tennis. We've seen that occur. So to act like it's never a thing, that's not true. But more often than not, you see streaks and runs, and you certainly saw that in Federer Nadal. You certainly saw that in Nadal Djokovic, like where you'd go on a stretch where one player kind of owns the other, and normally there are twists and turns. It's usually how it goes. If you look at the US Open final in isolation, like, let's be honest, Alcaraz played a killer match. I mean, again, I think it's the best performance of his career. He's not always going to play that well. Jannik Sinner, he did not play his best match. He is sometimes going to play better than that. He just is. So that's tennis. That's just tennis. I do not expect at all that Alcaraz will continue to win 7 out of every 8 matches against Jannik Sinner. From member video listener, do you think Sinner's serve has regressed, or is it just a cold streak? He changed his motion in 2024, 3 question mark, and it was a nonstop talking point, but it has let him down. Yeah, it was 2023 when he changed his motion. To win against Carlos, who is the better athlete, he needs to use his height and be the better server. Thoughts? Yeah, I generally agree with that statement. Sinner has to outserve Alcaraz if he wants to win more often than not. I generally agree with that statement. The question here is, do you think Sinner's serve has regressed? I'm not sure. I don't know, but I do think, I will say this, I think Sinner's serve became overrated. Now, I don't think Jannik overrated his own serve, but I do think within tennis media and tennis discourse, I think Sinner's serve got really overrated. I do. And there's a reason for that. He made a technical change to his serve, and he started winning everything. And his serve definitely improved. If you look at 2022 Sinner or 2021 Sinner, it's like, hey, this 6'4" guy has a very manageable serve. Like, it is not scary at all. So, serve definitely improved. He made a technical change, and he started crushing it. And 1 + 1 = 2. Jannik's serve became this big storyline, and it got really overrated. And I know that people are going to come at me with stats here. Like, I'll look right now at who is the leader in hold rate. It's Sinner. That's who I thought it would be. Sinner leads the tour in hold rate in the last 52 weeks at 92%. So people are going to come at me with that stat. And that means that Jannik Sinner is the best serve holder on the tour. That does not mean that he is the best server or even close to the best server. Just like on the women's side right now, Iga Swiatek has a better hold rate than Aryna Sabalenka. But nobody would say that Iga's serve is better than Sabalenka's serve. Just as an example. When you isolate the serve, like you only look at the serve, Jannik falls off, like significantly falls off. Like ace rate, let me count right now. I'm just going to go to ace rate. So this is a stat where the rest of the tennis point doesn't matter. And it doesn't matter that Jannik has probably a top 3 serve +1 forehand, a top 3 +1 backhand, and is a top 2 baseliner in the game. And you just look at ace rate. Among top 50 players, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 18, 19, 20, 21. He's 22nd among top 50 players in ace rate. He is slightly above average. And I think when you, and again, I want to do a catch up with Tom Corey at Tennis Insights. When you just isolate the serve like some of their data can do, how close to the line is he hitting the serve? What is his average speed? What is the swing? What is the damage level in terms of how often it produces an attackable +1? How often does he get free points? When you put just the serve into an algorithm, he ends up like slightly above average. And that's what I mean by the serve is overrated. Because I think a lot of people are like, Jannik's got a great serve. And he doesn't yet. I think this is... Look, on one hand, he's put in so much work to tweak and tweak and tweak. You want to say like, all right, it seemed like he finally found something he could settle on. And it's almost painful for Sinner to be like, well, I'm actually not done yet with the serve and I'm still going on this. But maybe he does need to keep going in terms of serve tweaks. All right, next. This one is from Praya. Hi, Gill. I'm wondering how much did Sinner's low first serve percentage matter to the outcome of the match? Has anyone ever won a Grand Slam final with a 48% first serve percentage or lower? Well, I'm trying to think. I mean, Jannik... Let me take a look at something here. Let's go to Sinner's results and let's sort by top 10 and then let's go with wins. We're doing some on-the-fly interesting research here with Tennis Abstract. Okay, so Sinner in his career has 48 wins against top 10 opponents. Let's see what the lowest first serve percentage is. Okay, it's 48%, when he beat he beat Rublev in Cincinnati last year at 48%. The next lowest is he beat Djokovic at Roland Garros this year in the semifinal, and I remember quite vividly talking about his first serve in this match and how I actually think Jannik served well in this match because his spot serving was so good and he was backing up his second serve so well. He won 63% of his second serve points in the semifinal against Djokovic. But the number here is 51.4%. So we'll round down and go 51%. So here's the best I can do for you as far as an answer here. In Sinner's 48 wins against top 10 players, only once has he served at 48%. So let me put it this way. Only once has he been below 49% among 48 wins over top 10 players. So that basically tells you, usually if he serves that low of a percentage, he's not going to beat a top player. If you sort by losses, wow. Okay, here's a stat, folks. Sinner has lost 36 times against top 10 players. So let me just go to all. So 48 plus 36. How many matches is that? Quick math. Sorry, guys, I'm like Taylor Fritz. I don't do math very well. This was his second lowest first serve percentage in any match against a top 10 player in his career, because only that Rublev match in Cincinnati was lower. Second lowest among 84 matches. So, all right. That's enough of that. Enough of that stat geeking. All right. Next one is from, Shushapu? Do you think Jannik's abdominal pull versus FAA affected his serve? It was noticeably worse from that point onwards. Also, I personally feel that serving below 50% on first serves killed his confidence in the match and made him miss his staple baseline shots. Maybe. But at the same time, I don't know. I don't know about that. It's definitely demoralizing to miss that many first serves. But the fact that he made a lot of effective first serves and then just missed off of slow forehands, missed on favorable +1 forehands, or got neutralized on favorable +1 forehands, I can't blame that on him missing a lot of first serves. And I think that was one of the biggest problems for Jannik in the match, was actually backing up his effective first serves. And in that sense, it's kind of hard for me to make that leap. But just one point that needs to be made here about the abdominal injury, I think. If we just go to, hold on, now I'm on Sinner's page and I've got all of these annoying filters on. All right, Sinner at the US Open, first serve percentage, he was 50.6%, call it 51% against Popyrin. He was 58% against Shapovalov. He was 58% against Bublik, 61% against Musetti, and 53% against Felix, although I'm not sorting by set. So I just think it should be said, it's not as if the first serve percentage was stellar even before he took that medical timeout against Felix. And if you look at his first serve percentage last 52 weeks, it's 61%, which is not a horrible number, but it's certainly not a standout number. My thing with the ab pull, the abdominal pull, I literally would not have noticed anything if he didn't take a medical timeout. I would not have even suspected that there was an issue. So that's how thin the visual evidence of an obvious ailment are when it comes to Sinner's abdominal. It's not to say that everything was perfect. The fact is, most players, when they play matches, especially this time of year, they're not perfect. Something hurts. Something's going on. Fatigue is a real thing. Off days are a real thing. All of these things can factor in. But as far as evidence that the abdominal was really holding him back, it's just, as I said on Monday Match Analysis, there's just not a lot there. It's just not. From Varun. Hi, Gill. Not U.S. Open related, but what are your thoughts on the Kyrgios versus Sabalenka Battle of the Sexes match? I personally think it's great, as it will get more eyes on tennis, and given that Nick tries, can demonstrate the differences in men's and women's tennis. Interesting. First of all, so much of me is just skeptical that this is going to happen. I don't know. It feels like the kind of thing that doesn't end up happening for whatever reason. And maybe it's the fact that Nick is involved, but it just feels that way. But if it happens, I'm of two minds on this. Part of me is like, this to me is not a question that needs answering. It's not a myth that needs busting. Men, top 100 or high-level professional female tennis players cannot compete competitively with high-level professional male tennis players. So again, this is not something that is something that needs to be put in the lab, and we don't need to get the test tubes out and play a battle of the sexes match in order to figure this out. My concern would be that the tennis product isn't good here, that Nick goes through the motions, kinds of like we see this in a lot of these like fights that are made that are silly, like a Mike Tyson, Floyd Mayweather boxing match or something like that, where it's like they're kind of competing. And it's like, if that happened, it's like, that Floyd is going to make sure to win. Okay. When Mayweather boxed McGregor, okay, which is, by the way, not a terrible comparison here, because it's like, is Conor McGregor a great boxer? Compared to like people, yes, he's an unbelievable boxer. But compared to a professional boxer, no, he's a bad boxer because he's an MMA fighter. So when McGregor fought Mayweather was always going to win. But you had this element of like Floyd kind of letting it be competitive in a way that was like, it's like he wants it to be more of an entertaining product, but it actually ends up being way less entertaining because Floyd is not locked in completely. And I could just see this being both players kind of not fully going into this with the kind of like intensity that would make it the best tennis product possible. But I can say all of this and I'd still turn it on. And it's the kind of thing that I feel like a lot of people are going to have opinions and be like crap on it, and then they're going to turn it on. And at the end of the day, that's the goal of something like this. This happens through the forces of entertainment capitalism. It happens because everybody knows, or business people know, that if we make this happen, people are going to turn it on. And that's the truth. From member Ollie, one thing I wanted your opinion on, Gill, is the rudeness of the crowd in tennis. If the player ever questions anything, be it a let cord not called and so forth, the crowd seems so quick to jeer and complain. I just think that players should be able to talk to the umpire without the crowd constantly moaning or chipping in. Your thoughts? Yeah, I agree. What's with this, honestly? As soon as a player goes to talk to the umpire, the people in the crowd just go, boo! Like, what the heck is that? I don't get it. So I'm with you. Why are we so quick to boo? The thing is, though, boos are very loud. Boos are louder than cheers. So when 20% or 15% of a stadium boos, it sounds like half the stadium. Next one from Alex. Djokovic admitted after losing the US Open that he can't keep up with Sinner and Alcaraz. If he does come back for another season, should he consider a tech change? He's still using a 95 square inch frame with a dense string pattern and insane static and swing weight. Not to mention relatively ancient graphite technology. Modernizing equipment has worked for other players, and I think it's now clear that he needs to change something to have any shot at 25. First of all, I'm pretty sure Novak has tried. He's played around, and the results have not been good. Not in real matches, but I mean on the practice courts. I think Head has given Novak a lot to play around with, and it just hasn't worked. So that's the context. I forget where I have heard that or why I know that, but I've been told that from somewhere. I also would say that Novak is serving great, hitting the forehand great, hitting the backhand great. He doesn't look underpowered at all. It's just the decline of Novak here is so legs related, so physicality related, that I just have trouble getting behind the idea that he should play around with the racket technology. I mean, you make like a compelling point. There's no doubt. Like Novak's technology is super old, and it's kind of amazing that he can go toe to toe in some of the power baselining, like you're able to see him do nowadays with the technology that he is using. That said, he does use gut. You know, the gut is powerful string. Like full bed of poly is much lower powered, so that helps Novak get that penetration through the court a little bit more. But other than that, it's low powered stuff. The 95 square inch frame, though, I feel like Novak, he's such a clean hitter that why not use 95 square inch and get the benefits of that extra precision? Like Federer just needed that extra stability for his one-handed backhand, the extra forgiveness, I should say. So when he went up in frame size, it really helped him out. But I don't know if Novak would get the same benefit. Next one from Nathan, also a member. Based on what we saw at this US Open, what do you think FAA's chances are to make the World Tour Finals? He's now 13 in the world, if I'm not wrong, and the indoor season is coming. Conditions that have typically suited him well. Although admittedly, I'm not sure he's ever done particularly well in Asia. Does he even have that many points to defend coming up? All right. Yeah, good question, but you're a little bit off in your framing of this. Felix is kind of in the driver's seat to make the ATP Finals, and this completely snuck up on me, but he is currently 10th in the race. Djokovic didn't play the ATP Finals last year, and if I were to guess, he won't play it this year, but we'll see. Draper just pulled out with injury. Jack right now is 9th in the race ahead of Felix, so you can almost use a magic eraser on Jack and pretend he doesn't exist. Novak out, Jack out. That means Felix, if Novak were to indeed be out and the season ended today, that means Felix today is in, which is it's just a little bit wild considering it didn't feel like he was having a good season. Now, in reality, he won a title in January. He was a destroyer in February. He had a massive February. And, you know, we de-emphasize that part of the season, but the rankings don't. I mean, there's no 1,000, but the final he made in Dubai, that's a 500. So, he's in really good shape. And it's as you pointed out, like he gets to play a lot of events here that he's historically played well at, you know, Basel, just to name one. But indoors, right? He's played great indoors. All right, this one is from member Sunny Flies. Hey, Gill, what do you see in Taylor Fritz's future as of now? Currently, he has not been able to win a big title since Indian Wells 2022, despite being one of the top 10 guys in the ATP. What does he have to do differently in order to get a big title, reach another slam final, etc.? I feel as if he can do more. What do you think he needs to do to achieve this? The big title stat is almost weird because it doesn't feel like that for Taylor. It doesn't feel like he's in any drought whatsoever, considering last year it was, by really any logical metric, it was like a banner year for Fritz. He finishes number 4 in the world. He makes the finals in Turin. He makes the final at the US Open. And then this year, struggles in the first half. He's got an oblique injury. He's not playing the big points well in losing a lot of close matches. But then since the grass court season, he leads the tour and wins. And now he is in a position. Where is he in the race? We just talked about the race, but he's 5th. And if Djokovic kind of stops playing now post US Open, Taylor, given the point gap, it's about 300 points. Like, Fritz probably repeats finishing 4 in the world, which is a huge success. So in that sense, it feels like all things have been really good in Taylor Fritz world. And you almost don't expect to get a question that is framed as, he hasn't done this, so what can he do? But at the same time, your question is not invalid, because that's how Taylor needs to look at this. Otherwise, what's the point? Like, Taylor's not going to wake up and in Southern California and go for his training block and be like, yeah, I'm all good. Let's just continue doing what we're doing. Absolutely not. It's trying to figure out, how do I push the envelope? So, in my opinion, he needs to play a little bit bigger and bolder. Not the first serve. The first serve is great. You don't touch that. You do not lay a finger on that. That weapon works at the highest level. He actually leads the tour in first serve win percentage. That's another thing, by the way, with Sinner, if I can circle back. Part of the reason why Sinner is the most prolific serve holder in the world is what he does on the second serve. But I'm not talking about the second serve. I'm talking about the first serve. That's what I'm saying has gotten overrated because everybody thinks it's amazing. If you look at first serve win percentage, then Sinner is still really good. He's 3rd after Fritz and Pecci Pericard. Second serve win percentage, though, he's 1st by a lot. Like, he's ahead of Alcaraz by 2 percentage points. That's one of the big reasons why he is the tour leader in hold percentage. And that's not because of his serve. That's because of how well he plays the points. I mean, his second serve is a good second serve, but it's because of how well he plays the points. All right, I got sidetracked there. Okay, yeah. Taylor needs to be a little bit more imposing off the ground. That might sound like a surprising answer. I know a lot of people, when they talk about how can Fritz improve, it's you got to add dimensions. You've got to be better at net rushing. You've got to add a drop shot, which he did, and he was actually using it well last year. It's kind of fallen off this year. A lot of it is variety, because that's what Taylor struggles in. But I actually think that if he can find a way to play a little bit faster off the ground, that's a more accessible improvement, right? He is closer to being able to do that and be confident in it and have command in that on big points. Whereas when it comes to net rushing, like, I'm sorry, I just never see a world in which Taylor Fritz is playing like Jannik Sinner and he's like forcing his way forward into Sinner's like sliding backhand, which you know he's going to hit hard and low. And then Taylor's going to be like, yeah, this is fine. I'll just hit a drop volley. That's what Alcaraz does. Like, Carlos is like, yeah, this is fine. I'll just hit a drop volley from my shins. But I just can't see that ever being Fritz. What I do think is more attainable is if he can be a little bit more consistently confident and lethal on his forehand, because I watched a ton of him at the US Open and he admits this. I was interviewing him and I kind of joked around with him. It didn't start out as a joke. I told Taylor that he led the tour in first serve win rate. And I said, do you know this? Were you aware of this? And he said, no, but I'm kind of a bot. That's what he said. And I said, you're not a bot. And he said, yeah, I'm just kind of a bot who pushes from the baseline. And then I'm just like, all right, Taylor. And I went on to the next question. But so he's being self-deprecating, and a bot would dream to have that kind of movement and consistency and, frankly, defense. But what it shows from Taylor is an awareness that sometimes he can start to play it a little bit safe from the back of the court. We know he's not an elite mover. He's a good mover. And by the way, for his movement, he's actually a really excellent defender, which he doesn't get enough credit for. He really does make balls in the court when he gets, when he goes hard into the corners and he's able to get the racket on a ball. But I just think that he can ramp things up a little bit and be more confident in his offensive tennis off the ground in big moments. That's what fell apart against Novak on the big points. He did not back himself to go after his backhand down the line and to really unleash on his forehand. And when Fritz has been able to play his very best tennis, it's him just letting loose on the forehand, being able to make that work. So that would be my answer, because fitness wise, yeah, he's done a lot so well that you feel like there's actually not that much that Taylor can do at this point. From Anwar. Dear Gill, I know the discourse right now is heavy on Sincaraz, and rightfully so, but as a longtime Medvedev fan, I had to make this observation and ask this to you and the rest of the commenters. Has Medvedev become somewhat of a bully on court? I mean, he's always been a little bit edgy, or a lot, especially in New York City. But I can't help but notice that his declining tennis has come with this horrible shift in behavior and attitude that's jarring to me, and honestly made me feel disappointed in him. Am I being too harsh? No, I don't think you're being too harsh. I mean, what he did against Bonzi at the US Open, it's pretty indefensible. I mean, a call was made that was unfortunate, that was maybe borderline, but also mostly, in my eyes, justified. And Daniil lost control, and then also incited the crowd in a way that I think was pretty calculated. So that's that. But look, at the end of the day, you mentioned that he's always been kind of edgy. There have been numerous moments with Daniil that have made me pretty uncomfortable in terms of things that he's said to umpires and just how he's treated umpires. I think he's crossed the line several times with chair umpires in terms of insulting them on a personal level that I just feel isn't cool. Because I'm always okay, like if you lose your mind at a call and you want to just be really, really, really angry about something, I'm never going to be like, oh, that's unsportsmanlike. Like, don't smash your racket. Don't be angry. But I do think that there are certain things that Daniil has said to a chair umpire that I just don't think you should say that to human beings. And then you look at things like kicking the camera, or how many different there's multiple times, by the way, where he's broken cameras. Like, Daniil does not control himself very well when things are not going well. Do I think that there's been a shift in his character? I do not. But when you are winning, it's all gravy. When you are down 2-0 against Benjamin Bonzi, match point, it's not all gravy. In fact, it kind of feels like the sky is falling, and you have terrible thoughts, undoubtedly rummaging through your head. And at that point, you are vulnerable to the worst qualities coming out. I don't think Medvedev has gotten worse behaviorally. I think he's just gotten more frustrated on the tennis court on a more regular basis. That's my read on it. From Steven Herzog. Hey, Gill, how do you feel about the mixed doubles? I was able to attend it day one, and I think it was super cool to see the biggest stars having fun, being in real question mark competition at the same time. What wasn't so great is how it turned the once quiet and amazing qualies week into the same circus as the main draw crowd-wise. For the US Open coffers, it was a smashing success, but that is often inverse to fan experience. And what did you think about it being only 2 days and in the 2 out of 3 Fast Four format? It felt like some of the matches were about 18 minutes long. Curious your thoughts. Glad somebody asked about this. Didn't really get to talk about it on YouTube, although I did make a TikTok. I might have put it on Instagram, although I actually don't think I put it on Instagram. Anyway, follow me on those platforms, please. How did I feel about mixed doubles? I think in almost every aspect, it was a success. Like, basically everything. Let me start with the negative, the part that maybe feels a little bit off. Calling it a slam. Saying that Aryna and Vavasori won a US Open title. Saying that, Swiatek and Rude have been a finalist at a major in doubles. Like, to give it that label. To just be like, yes, it's a major, it's a slam. That just doesn't, it's still, because of the format, the invitation system, all of that stuff, it just feels a little bit wrong. And that part would probably be the part that I think it takes some effort to get past. But if you accept the fact that, wait a second, or here's how I look at it. What did the mixed doubles tournament used to mean? What was it before? Well, there were never any rankings points involved. So in that sense, it was a little bit exhibition-y already because there's no rankings. These events are in isolation. They are simply prize money events. Secondly, I'm going to quiz you right now. Who won mixed doubles at Wimbledon? In fact, I'm forgetting. Oh, yeah, now I remember. Yeah, I'm going to quiz you right now. If you're listening to this podcast, who won Wimbledon mixed doubles? Do you recall? And if you cannot recall, what does that tell you about the cultural impact of a mixed doubles title? And in that sense, by the way, it was Katerina Siniakova and Sem Verbeek. But if you've never heard of Sem Verbeek, who's a really nice guy, by the way, very happy for him. If you've never heard of Sem Verbeek, then how much weight were you actually putting in that slam title in the first place? How much? So obviously, with the change that the US Open has made, they have multiplied the impact and the relevance of mixed doubles times 100. And they've put it in this fan week, this qualies week, where it builds hype for the tournament. It makes sense for the top players to compete, and actually probably they get some benefit from it to just sort of get into that competition mode on the big courts a little bit early on. I watched day one, almost all of it, inside Louis Armstrong Stadium. And to think that for free, people were watching Taylor Fritz and Elena Rybakina and Jasmine Paolini and who else? Taylor Townsend and Ben Shelton and Venus Williams and Riley Opelka for free. I mean, that's pretty awesome. I always feel so prideful about that on behalf of the sport and the US Open that just for a little bit, like, this is accessible. Come on down. We're showcasing the sport. So that part I love. The prize money for the doubles players increased massively here. In men's doubles and women's doubles, okay, if you're feeling bad about the double specialists because you feel like they've lost money, well, here's the thing. The US Open's revenue has increased as a result of the mixed doubles. And now they can sell it to the TV partners, And obviously, they're getting more people in the doors for Fan Week, which had record attendance. I forget the number, but it was a really impressive number through Monday through Saturday at the US Open this week. And what they've done is they've taken that revenue and they've used it to increase prize money. And the total prize money for mixed doubles is equal to the increase in prize money in men's and women's doubles. So they did make the doubles players whole financially for this as well. Now, I do hope that they continue to put 1 to ideally more like, I'd like to see maybe 3 traditional doubles teams in the draw every year, because I find the singles stars versus doubles specialist storyline, I find that unbelievably compelling. And of course, it ended up being Vavasori and Arani, the defending champions, defending their titles, and the way they were moving at the net and cutting off the middle of the court was the class of the field, and how great they were on the reflex volleys, and how close they got to the net in terms of getting in position for put away volleys. Was so good, especially Vavasori at the net is just insane. Like, to think that Sara Arani is serving her like powder puffs and like Taylor Fritz is returning and Vavasori is just like, yeah, I'm not playing 2 back. Like Paolini, when Arani plays with Paolini, they play 2 back on Arani's serve. But Vavasori was like, nope, I'm standing at the net. Taylor, you can drill a return at me from Arani's serve, and I'm just going to sit here and reflex it. Crazy. So I loved that. I loved those dynamics. Yeah, I can't knock the mixed doubles. That said, if I did have a lot of knocks, everything I just said is true and how I actually feel. But as you guys know, and I like to at least disclose this, I'm not really going to be super critical of the USTA, considering I work for them. Okay, from member Lindsay Andrew. I saw headlines about lets potentially being played at slams in the future. Any thoughts? Well, yeah, the US Open experimented with this in the juniors draw. Look, I've thought this forever, by the way. Lets don't make a lot of sense to me, service lets. Like, logically, they seem quite arbitrary. Why is the net in play for every single shot in tennis, but for the serve, we've decided that the net is out of play? Why? And I understand everybody's nightmare scenario of like, oh, it's going to be match point and somebody's going to serve it and it's going to hit the net cord and trickle over for this terrible anticlimactic ending to a major to win Wimbledon. I understand that that's everybody's nightmare. Look, I don't see a ton of particular differences with somebody hitting a return of serve that hits the top of the net tape and trickles over on championship point. Yeah, I don't. But I get that you eliminate at least one possibility there. What I think people misunderstand, and in fairness, I did, Mark Lucero, who is a coach at USC, I asked him and he wasn't quite sure. So maybe it's a debate to be had. But a lot of people think that the servers are going to get these little trickly net cords constantly. I don't think that's how it is. I think the net cords will generally benefit the returner because the serve has slowed down and it will sit up a little bit. That's what I think will happen more often than not if they legalize lets, which I think would make for kind of a dynamic and athletic point. Like, you have to adjust, and now you have a bit of a sitter. You might be able to approach off the return. Like, I think it's kind of exciting. And then on the other hand, you have times where these great first serves just nick the net, and it basically looks like an ace, but oh no, it skimmed the net. And now the server, in my eyes, has basically been robbed of what was basically just a really good serve. Don't forget the fact that there are going to be some where somebody hits a great serve, and because of the play-let rule, they're actually just rewarded for hitting a great serve, and it's going to be an ace instead of a let. It actually kind of bothers me when I see these almost phantom-looking lets occur on serves that basically clear the net, but just it's a skim job. So look, I don't need lets. Am I super passionate about getting rid of lets? No. Is it to speed up the game? No. That is not the reason. But logically, I just don't really understand service lets. For Max, hey Gill, what are your thoughts on Sabalenka's US Open title run and the WTA side of things when you were on site? Well, first of all, I thought Sabalenka was actually kind of off her game for most of the tournament. Interestingly enough, I felt like the consistency based on her body control was a struggle through her first few matches at the Open. I didn't see much of the Pegula semifinal because I was traveling that night. But against Aryna Sabalenka, I thought she played one of the best matches of her career. And what an impressive situation for Sabalenka. If you first go off just the pressure of being number one in the world and potentially looking at a slamless season. And that is not an easy position to be in. Like, you've got a lot of demons there for Aryna, considering just what she's gone through this year in terms of getting close a lot, the finals not going her way. She's playing another American at the U.S. Open. Yes, she got over that hump last year, beating Pegula in the U.S. Open final, but it was another situation where the crowd was going to be loud, going against her. Same thing that she had to contend with in 2023 when she lost to Goff in the U.S. Open final. She's facing Amanda Anisimova, who owns a 6-3 head-to-head advantage over her. Beat her at Wimbledon. And Sabalenka, with an incredibly composed performance, kind of choked at one point in the second set, didn't let that snowball. Actually, to me, really focused on her pace absorption. That, to me, technically, that's what she focused on. It's Anisimova's ball. It's so flat. It is so big. It just accelerates through the court. Andrea Petkovic in her newsletter was like, Anisimova's ball is the only ball that actually goes faster after it hits the court. And it does kind of feel that way. But Sabalenka was just getting super low and just making sure to, try to use Anisimova's pace against her in a way. But it was all about getting really, really low against that flat penetrating ball to kind of meet it and absorb it and redirect it effectively, and also just not take on so much risk, not be so intimidated by Anisimova's ball that Aryna felt the need to take undue risk, which I think that's how it's been in the past. It's been like, all right, we're two of the big ball strikers on tour. I have to beat Amanda to the punch. And by the way, previewing the match, like, you might have said that, like, Aryna has to beat Amanda to the punch. That actually isn't what she did. She was like, I don't have to beat Amanda to the punch. I can take her blows a little bit. I can actually try to keep the ball consistently on her forehand and let her hit herself out of points. And that's what ended up happening. So I thought it was a really, really impressive title from Sabalenka. This one's from Jordan. Hey, Gil, now that we're on an 8-slam run for Sincaraz, how do you think their rivalry stacks up compared to those of the big three in terms of excitement, quality of play, and unpredictability? In my opinion, they match the big three with their quality of tennis, but there's also a level of unpredictability to their rivalry at the slams that the big three never had. Rafa was almost always going to win on clay at RG. Djokovic typically beat Nadal on hard courts. Federer was the favorite at Wimbledon against Rafa until he was finally defeated in the Epic in 2008, and his best chances against Novak were always on grass, even though he failed to break through after 2012. Last year, I thought it was possible we'd be falling into a similar pattern with Sincaraz, where Sinner had the advantage at the hardcourt slams, Alcaraz at the natural surface slams. But with these last two majors, and with Sinner having match points at RG, I really get the sense that these guys' rivalry will likely not be defined by surface nearly as much as the big threes, which, to me, makes it more unpredictable and exciting. What are your thoughts? I totally agree with this. It's one of the things, it's like you read my mind. I was literally thinking this during the US Open final. This rivalry has been pretty unpredictable surface-wise in so many ways, honestly. I mean, Alcaraz has won 2 Wimbledons, but is 0-2 against Sinner at Wimbledon. And Jannik won the early clay meetings against Alcaraz, or maybe it was just one in Umag. Maybe it was just one. The hard courts, it's been Alcaraz, even though Sinner hard court is Jannik's best surface. There's just no doubt about that. Yeah, that part has been fascinating. But look, it does make some sense. I think that Djokovic is a pretty surface agnostic player. I've said for a long time that Jannik Sinner, I think as he gets a little bit more comfortable and experienced on the natural surfaces, he will become that as well. But Federer's backhand was built for grass. And it was most vulnerable on clay, where the slice wasn't going to be as effective, where the contact points were going to be higher on his backhand. So that much was clear. Nadal's forehand was going to be way better on slower surfaces with higher bounces, because it was a forehand that just really benefited from a lively bounce off the court. That was so big. And also, if you got him moving to his right with pace, you could kind of take away the potency of the forehand, which Djokovic was able to do in the cross court on the ad side. So if you look at a Nadal forehand and a Federer backhand, you have individual strokes that have very tailored qualities, suited or not suited to certain conditions. And with Sinner and Alcaraz, you don't have as much of that, which is becoming the norm in tennis. These hyper well-rounded players who kind of attack from everywhere and just have just more, fewer holes, more completeness. And that, generally speaking, just takes away some of the surface dependence here. From Where's the Cheese At? Hey, Gill, Sinner has made it clear in his press conference that his goal going forward will be adding more variety to his game and becoming more unpredictable. He even said he'd be willing to risk losing some matches if that's what it will take. Do you think it is something that he will manage to achieve with time, or do you think it's about having a certain natural talent for it like Alcaraz and that he will never get there? Yeah, what Jannik said after the match, so interesting. I will flag this. He was speaking immediately after the match ended. And there are going to be long, detailed conversations between Darren, Simone, and Jannik, and thinking might change. So while it is definitely worth discussing what Jannik said after the match, it is also definitely important to acknowledge that thinking might change. I'm a little bit skeptical that Sinner becoming a more artistic and varied player is going to be the pathway to having more success in the head-to-head. I think that Sinner is fixated on the parts of his game that are the weakest. But to your point, and I guess this is what you're asking, he's not going to be able to train his way into moving at the net as naturally as Carlos, or softening up his hands for drop shots and drop volleys as well as Carlos, or having the kind of inventiveness in terms of improvisational ideas that Carlos has. I don't think Jannik can train himself into getting to that point. He can certainly continue to improve his net rushing and improve his drop shots. And if that can become a more confident and reliable part of his game, great. That will help Jannik for sure. But there are some more simple things that I think are potentially available. Again, serving better. To use the 6'4" frame in a way that is going to allow him to outserve Alcaraz is going to be really crucial for him. Being more durable, getting stronger and faster. Like, I do wonder if there's still some gains to be made in the movement deficit, because most of the time when I watch Sinner and Alcaraz play, I do feel like there is a legitimate deficit there. Now, it exists for basically everybody who plays Alcaraz outside of, like, first of all, I do think Alcaraz is the fastest, but again, it's a short list of guys like Tommy Paul and Davidovich Fokina who I think don't look slow next to Alcaraz. Basically everybody does. But that's a question for Jannik. Opening up the court more, like, that's a form of variety, like short angles, but that's also been something that I've focused on. I still think that Sinner has a lot of success when he's able to produce great angles, but I think Alcaraz does it far more consistently, which is obviously something that I focused on Monday Match Analysis. So there's some simpler, more comfortable things that I think Sinner can have an easier time improving. Like, ultimately, what a lot of coaches feel very strongly that it's important to focus on strengths. And the reason, or one of the reasons for that, is usually it's easier to make strengths better. It's the path of less resistance. Now, the greats clog up their holes and work on their weaknesses. The greats do that, undoubtedly. There is countless examples of that. But I think there's also some strength building that is there to be had for Sinner. All right. Time for maybe one more. Maybe two more. This one's from Zeta Cheese. Have you noticed the extra compactness on Alcaraz's forehand? I thought both the forehand and the backhand looked way less rushable throughout the US Open run. The blueprint for beating Alcaraz the past 2 years have been rush his ground strokes and attack his serve. I feel like that blueprint is slowly getting dismantled by Alcaraz's improvements / changes. Yes. Great comment. Totally agree. Those are the two things. And between Carlos improving the spot serving, figuring out a way to suddenly, come grass court season, he's got a great slice serve out of nowhere. So the serving getting better. And yes, the technical changes that he made on the backhand sort of lowered the setup, and lowering the setup usually makes it easier to absorb pace, a little bit more compact and closer to the point of contact. And on the forehand, same thing. I need to deep dive this, and I know Hugh Clark has dabbled in these observations as well, with Alcaraz lowering the setup on his forehand, just lower elbow. Maybe the hands are a little bit lower. Instead of top of the ear, maybe it's kind of bottom of the ear, just these subtle changes that make it a little bit easier for Carlos to absorb. But I mean, this was the main thing that, like, there was a comment in here that I don't think I'm going to get to, but it was asking me to kind of address the things that surprised me most in terms of getting my prediction wrong. Well, I posted as a question in the preview: can Alcaraz get his variety off under time pressure? Because at Wimbledon, the time pressure killed his variety, and then Sinner was able to get into his rhythmic baselining groove. My prediction was based on that can and will happen again. Alcaraz didn't let it happen again, because under that time pressure, he was still able to create variety, buy himself time, and ultimately absorb. Like, how many times did Sinner on big backhands down the line get countered by Alcaraz, often from deep court positions, which also buys him time, and he has the ability to hit huge from deep court positions, which I think really helps. Maybe on grass, he feels the need to hug the baseline a little bit more, and that also makes him more rushable. But on clay and hardcourt, he's actually able to peel back a bit. So that helps. But how many times did Alcaraz counter Sinner on hard backhands down the line by going huge into the open court? That's the forehand corner being indestructible. That's what it was in the final. It was indestructible. Sinner couldn't burn a hole through it. like he has been able to in the past. Last one from Criterion X97. Sounds like a transformer or something. Hi, Gill. Any thoughts on Alex de Minaur's game? He seemed pretty devastated in his U.S. Open press conference after losing to Felix, but reiterated he'll keep working hard to improve. I wonder how much progress he can make in the rankings, given his capped power off the ground and poor first serve. I guess my question is, has he reached his ceiling? Because I worry that he has hit a plateau that he cannot breach. Thanks. Love your work. Yeah, look, I mostly share the general feeling. I mean, at the end of the day, mentally, he's unbelievable. He's an animal in how he competes. Physically, he's spectacular. There's nobody more fit, really, and quick than Alex de Minaur. And then in terms of adding technical dimensions to the game, he's become a lot more offensive, willing to take initiative whenever he has an opportunity on a short ball. His net rushing has become really good. He's added some strength, which has increased his first serve speed and his forehand speed. So he's done so much in recent years to facilitate his breakthrough into the top 10. And now it's like, well, what's next? Well, first of all, he had a big opportunity here against Felix to, do something special, make a major semifinal. But as I predicted, it was too much for him to handle from a nerve standpoint. He performed badly because the situation put too much pressure on his shoulders, and he could not withstand that pressure, and he just couldn't perform. So it's almost like, if he's in a major quarterfinal, he needs almost a situation in which he's not such a favorite. He was a favorite against Felix, right or wrong. I think he felt like a favorite. I mean, he's looking across the net at a guy who he knows, like Alex knows, as he's trying to make his first career major semifinal, that he has been better than this guy by a lot for the last 2 years. Honestly, probably 3 years. And now he has an opportunity to play somebody who he has consistently outperformed week in and week out on tour for such a big accomplishment. Of course he felt like the favorite. Just didn't handle the pressure well. But as far as what he can do, the biggest thing for me is that first serve. That first serve is so inaccurate. It is so inaccurate. And, man, I mean, if he can just try to improve that, it's a huge area of potential improvement because it's low percentage. It's so low percentage right now. And I know he doesn't get the trajectory because he's 5'11". You know what? There are a lot of players 6 feet tall, 5'11", that are able to serve better than Alex. And if you look at the technique, there's a lot of stuff in there that's pretty, what's the word here? A lot of the benchmarks he hits in his technique are a little bit off. So the biggest thing for me, if you rack your brain around what de Minaur can possibly do, it's go into the garage a little bit and look at serve tweaks. Because there's definitely some stuff with the positioning of his elbow in the trophy position, and maybe the rhythm and fluidity / lack thereof in the serve, and maybe even how much drive he's getting off of the ground. And I just think there might be some stuff in there that he can play around with, because I think for Alex, that's the thing. That's the thing. The serve is actually fast enough. Like he's averaging 120s. That's fine. But it goes all over the map. And that's where I think he can improve. All right, let's leave it at that. Steve Flinka interview coming up later on in the week. See you then. Hope you enjoyed. Don't forget to subscribe. I'll see you next time.